And welcome to another Tuesday morning coffee. And it's the 1st of September, so happy September to you all. I do hope that you are well, and I do thank you for joining me today. I know everyone has so much to do in their lives, and I do appreciate you sharing your time with me. So, what's new? Well, regarding the parish, what is new is that the latest edition of the Anchor, the September edition, was emailed out to everyone last night, and it's also available on Facebook. I've just reminded myself that I haven't sent a copy to Dave, who does the website, so it's not available on the website yet, but I will do that later. Talking about the Anchor, it was something I did yesterday, and it was a whole heap of travail. Yes, I'd almost finished. I started in the morning by 6 o'clock. I'd almost finished, and I was just putting my article in with the editorial, and I got the blue screen of death on my Windows 10 machine. And good morning, Laurie and Karen. So, what do you do when that happens? You reboot. So I rebooted, eventually got it going. There didn't seem to be any reason why the computer died. Good morning, Vern. And I tried to open the program again, and it said that there was something wrong with it. I ended up having to reinstall Dropbox and reinstall the program I use. It's an older program called Pages Plus X9. And I use it because I know how it works. I've got the new version, which works on both Mac and Windows, but it's one of those learning curves, which is a vertical line, which I don't have time to mess around with. Good morning, Mike and Jennifer. And so I ended up having to uninstall and reinstall Dropbox and this program, and then I tried to open the work I'd done all day, and it wouldn't open. It was corrupted. So I ended up starting from scratch at 6 o'clock. Fortunately, 90% of the work is prep, getting all the files in order, and etc. etc. And I also have a backup which I used. So it only took me maybe 3 hours to do it. So if there's a bunch of typos or weird things that look like Google searches, it's because by that time I was tired. And if I look tired today, it's because I was just sitting here. Even the dog got fed up and walked off. And so there you go. So the good news is I had a backup, so it wasn't too bad. The bad news is that it may not be as accurate as it might otherwise have been. So please be kind. So what else is going on? Well, if you read the Anchor, you will notice that it's this time of the year when we start discussing Bota, the blessing of the animals. And of course, Winston just goes all loony because he knows his time to shine is coming up. So there's an article from Kit, to whom good morning, Kit. And I put this on purpose so that y'all out there will know that, yes, something's coming up. And Winston talks about it, but then he talks about how animals have been used in the Bible with two stories. And we need help. So if you're able to help, please read the article in the Anchor and then let Kit know. I'm sure it's always a case of the more the merrier. And I've got a little fly or something who maybe wanted to make a leading role in this video, and he's not a member of. Oh, there he is. Is he gone? I think he's gone. Yes. He's not a member of Equity as far as I'm aware, but he's back again. Oh well, if you see this little black spot whizzing across, what should we name him? I don't know. Oswald. Let's just call the fly Oswald. Good morning, Pam. So that's one part. The second part of the good news is that we will be reopening our Right One 8 o'clock service. For those who are 8 o'clockers, this is your opportunity to begin returning to church if you don't have any pre-existing conditions, and if you feel that you would feel safe, we can only do our best in that. Masks will be required. Social distancing is required, but everything else we provide. Hand sanitizer, with the pews are already cordoned off, so you can't really do anything other than sit at a social distance, and which will open up the 10:30 service, 10 o'clock service, because we will be keeping it at that time, for other people to come. Again, the same rules apply. There will be something that we will ask of 8 o'clockers, and that is we will provide a box of wipes, so that you can just wipe down where you were sitting, the pew in front of you and behind you, just so that none of us who prepare for the 10 o'clock service will be having to do any work beforehand. So if that interests you, please do let me know. We can let any of the vestry members know and they'll pass it on to me. But I do need numbers and names, because it won't be like of old where you can just turn up and find a seat. We have a limited number. So hopefully that will be good news to you. It's a kind of trying to get back to normal within a situation that is anything but normal. But we do the best we can in the circumstances in which we find ourselves. And good morning, Holly. So according to the count, there are 17 people online, and I'm glad you're with me today. So let's look at the COVID numbers. This is something I've been doing from the start. This is a moment of reflection for our country, to think about those who've tested positive. And according to the numbers from the CDC I gleaned this morning, these are from yesterday, the number of positive is 5,972,356. So that's the number of positive. Within that is the number who have died, 182,622. And as always, these are individual souls with lives and families and friends and relatives and people who love them, people they loved. Some with faith, some without faith, but all loved by God, which then means that we love them too. So please do remember all those affected in your prayers. It's awful. Again, that number is just mind-boggling and beyond comprehension. It's, you just think of that number. It's just awful. And so I'm going to tell you another story from the news. And this came from, I don't know, is it just krem.com? Krem? K-R-E-M? Well, it was KREM2, which is an affiliate for something. But it's from Post Falls, Idaho. A Post Falls woman who saw Krem's story about the 25-year-old who died from COVID-19 this week said it saved her life. Lisa Rivera tested positive for COVID-19 Thursday last week. Doctors sent her home and told her to isolate because at the time she had only mild symptoms. Quote, "I thought I was winning this battle," Rivera said. "It wasn't in my lungs, so I thought everything was fine." A week later, Lisa saw our story about 25-year-old Ali Marsh, who died from COVID-19 after having difficulty breathing. It was that same night Lisa's symptoms worsened. She could not breathe either. Quote, "I just woke up. I probably can't breathe because of that," Rivera said. "I went to the bathroom. I almost passed out. Went back to the couch, sat down, and I thought. The first thing about her was I thought, oh boy, this is exactly what happened to her. I thought this is probably a message I need to not mess around and get to the hospital." She drove herself to Kootenai Health Hospital, but when she got there, Lisa could hardly make it inside. Quote, I just couldn't breathe, and I was trying with every ounce of energy just to make it from that parking lot into the emergency room. But I felt like I was going to pass out on the way. Doctors told Rivera it was good she got there when she did. They put her on oxygen right away. Quote, I would say she definitely saved my life, Rivera said. Ali did not die in vain. Her message was that she should have gone to the hospital a lot sooner. If it wasn't for her, I really don't think I would be here. I wouldn't have gone to the hospital. I know it. That's something she taught me. That's her legacy. Lisa is now home recovering. Doctors have her on an oxygen tank. She said her fever is gone and she's still a bit tired, but for the most part feeling much better, all thanks to Ali. Quote, my message to others is listen to your body, Rivera said. As soon as you feel you have a rapid heartbeat, tightness in your chest, don't wait for anything else. Get to the hospital. So this one, rather than being the sad news of a death, involves the death of somebody who's 25 years old with their life all in front of them, which is incredibly sad. But because of the message she gave, somebody else survived. So what can we learn from this? Well, the first thing is that we can't take how we physically feel for granted. If we feel off, then think about, in what way do I feel off? And take it seriously. This virus can just sneak up on you. And before you know it, it's bad news. The second thing is it seems that either this lady lived alone, or that because it was done in the early hours of the morning, that she woke up and felt as bad as she didn't want to disturb others during her time of illness. We know this because of the fact that she drove herself to hospital, which is both terrifying. I mean, what would have happened if there were other cars on the road and she collapsed completely? But it's also sad that she didn't have anybody who could take her, or didn't trust herself enough to get out of herself to contact somebody who would have taken her. Which raises this question. Who are you going to call if you have a night emergency? Who are you going to call? And don't say Ghostbusters, because that's the first thing that came into my head. But this is serious. Who are you going to call? Whatever the emergency is, who are you going to call? If the answer is no one, then please, please, please feel free to put my number in your contacts list, and do call me if the need arises. It's what I'm here for. It's one of the things, it's not that I miss it, but I don't think in the US, at least in the Episcopal Church in the US, there's the same understanding of a priest's availability for his parishioners as there is in the UK, where you are available 24/7, but not on the day off. No, if it's an emergency, even on a day off. And you are available in the middle of the night if need be. Crises come when they come. They don't clock on at 8 in the morning and clock off at 5 p.m. And they don't have the weekend off. So if you need somebody and there's nobody around, please make sure you've got my number in your contacts list and give me a call. You'll be surprised how awake I sound when I answer the phone in the middle of the night, because I'm attuned to doing that. So the secondary thing that comes from this is, do you have an ICE in your phone, an in case of emergency number or list of numbers easily accessible in your phone? I know I do in mine, and most of the people around me I know do as well. If you don't, set one up. Most phones, I think, will allow you to set certain contacts up as emergency contacts. Excuse me. I'm a bit bunged up this morning. Let me just have a sip of this. So, please do that. Also, which is even more important nowadays, is the church office or my number a part of your medical records and my name? So that if you do fall ill, we will, or you have an accident or worse, we will be informed. The HIPAA law has been out for years and years and years, but it's now being used, I suppose, in the way that it's written to be used, to protect the identity of people and their medical history, etc., etc. But it's now making it very, very difficult for clergy and other people to gain basic information. And the dog collar does not help at all anymore. And it holds no sway into finding out, even if you're in a hospital, never mind anything else. So if you're not on, if the church or myself isn't in your medical record somewhere, we're not going to be informed. And if we do hear something, then the hospital or the medical center or the facility, the assisted living facility, doesn't matter where you are, is not required. Well, actually, it is required by law not to release that information. So it's so bad that I can't even find out if a person has died if I'm not on the list. And we've had now 2 cases of that, maybe a third one that I'm looking into, and a fourth one, which happened recently, but we're still, again, trying to find information. You're just pushing against a legal framework. It's just not necessarily bureaucracy, but a legal framework which says we cannot give that information. And just think how horrible that is. One, for us not to know if you're ill or in hospital, and you're wondering where we are, and we're trying, but we can't get the information. Or 2, if the worst comes to the worst, we end up not doing your funeral because we didn't know. It's just horrific. The repercussions of this law are horrific. So please do make sure. And good morning, Anne. All right, the real late night availability. Yeah, it's part and parcel of the commitment a priest makes to be available to his people. That's all. So there you go. Call me if you need me, no matter what the time is. And if you haven't already created an in case of an emergency list, do so in your phone. If the church or myself is not in your medical record so that we will be contacted, please do so, so that we may know what's happening. Let's move on to something else. What's the time? Well, it's 18 minutes, I think. Yes. A couple of Sundays ago, I preached on Matthew 15, verses 10 through 20. It's one of those readings where I complained about, or as Father Lewis would say, whined about the lectionary creators not having included vital information beforehand, which was necessary to make sense of the verses in front of us. So I was reading from verses 10 to 20 of the 15th chapter of Matthew, but I needed to go back to make sense. Anyhow, the gospel reading also included another bunch of verses. So you see, in parenthesis were the verses 10 through 20, and then it went on to include verses 21 to 28. Now, when I sit down to write a sermon, the words of the readings have already been simmering in my head. So I have a kind of an idea of where I think I'm going to go in my sermon for that week. But these readings from Matthew for the last few weeks have been different. I've had an idea, and then I've started to write. And then, I don't know, maybe an hour later, I look at what I've written and thinking, where did all that come from? And sometimes I try and go back and steer it towards the direction I want to go in, but it doesn't really happen. And this is what happened with the gospel on the 16th of August. Now, over the years, I've learned to roll with it. Sometimes, well, often I try and fight it because I think that what I have to say is important. but it seems that sometimes the Holy Spirit thinks otherwise. So anyway, all this is a preamble for a text I received, a text message I received, asking why I didn't use the main gospel for that day. So there's your reason. I was looking at that gospel reading, had something in mind, and that something in mind went completely AWOL when I sat down to read. Now what's Kit saying? Every doc, hospital, etc. has a place to put emergency contacts, notification contacts. We need to put you in each one of those. Yes, please do. So let's look. Why not look at that reading, but today? So we're going to do that. So here's Matthew's Gospel, chapter 15, verses 21 through 28. And here's the version we would have had from the lectionary, which is the New Revised Standard Version. Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord. Yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. Now, just for fun, here's the same reading from the Bible version known as The Message. From there, Jesus took a trip to Tyre and Sidon. They had hardly arrived when a Canaanite woman came down from the hills and pleaded, "Mercy, Master, Son of David. My daughter is cruelly afflicted by an evil spirit." Jesus ignored her. The disciples came and complained, "Now she's bothering us. Would you please take care of her? She's driving us crazy." Jesus refused, telling them, "I've got my hands full dealing with the lost sheep of Israel." Then the woman came back to Jesus, went to her knees and begged, "Master, help me." He said, "It's not right to take the bread out of the children's mouths and throw it to dogs." She was quick. "You're right, Master, but beggar dogs do get scraps from the master's table." Jesus gave in. "Oh, woman, your faith is something else. What you want is what you get." Right then, her daughter became well. Bit of a difference, isn't there? Which is the main reason why the message exists. But the first thing is, we're told that Jesus came from there. Well, where is there? Well, we have to go back to chapter 14. After feeding the 5,000 and after walking on the water, Jesus and his disciples landed at Gennesaret, a town on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, which is, of course, a lake. Jesus leaves the country and goes to Tyre and Sidon, ports that are on the Mediterranean. And so now we're in modern Lebanon. It's kind of interesting, isn't it, when you think about Lebanon now, especially with what's just been happening there. This little bit of news that Jesus and his compadres have left the country is important for what transpires. Jesus takes a trip outside of Israel, and it seems that the first thing that happens to him and his gang is that he meets a foreigner. Immediately, we need to do a well, duh, because what would one expect? Now, it's kind of weird how people often react when they go to a foreign country. The Brits have got a kind of history of complaining about foreigners when they go abroad. It's the stuff of legends that, they'll go. Spain was in the 70s, it became very popular and very quite cheap to get to Spain. But they hated the food. They would complain about foreign muck, and they'd want their pie and chips, and to the point that parts of Spain became British enclaves with its own British pub and its British food and stuff like that. And of course, No one who speaks English wants to learn a foreign language, and I'm generalizing here, of course. All you need to do is shout at people in English, and they'll instantly go, "Why didn't you shout at me before? It's all totally clear to me now." Well, it seems that in a way, this is what's going on in this reading, that Jesus goes into another country and they meet a foreigner. Now, we have to remember that Jesus doesn't do anything without a very, very good reason. So why would Jesus take such a trip? Was it just time for a vacay at a nice beachside cafe? Well, I don't think so. So, what's going on? Jesus is wandering along in a foreign place when a Canaanite woman starts bawling at him, "Have mercy, my Lord, son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." How did she know who he was? It seems that his fame, or infamy, depending on whose side you're on, had travelled before him, and he'd gained a good amount of recognition. You know, he's the guy who travels with 12 others, and you'll be able to tell who he is just because. So this woman shouts this out, this Canaanite woman, a different religion, different region, different country, and Jesus ignores the person. He doesn't respond. She keeps going. And we've heard this before with kids. When the children came, that the disciples wanted to get rid of the kids, and Jesus says, "No, don't stop them, for such is the kingdom of heaven." And we have that beautiful image of him taking one of the children on his knee. The disciples here get just as fed up. So they go to Jesus and say, "Will you do something about this? This is just so annoying." And he kind of ignores them. And then, let me find the original text. He says, "I've got my hands full with dealing with the lost sheep." Or, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Now, within the thoughts and the worldview of the disciples, they would be going, "Yeah, exactly. That's why we don't need her around. You know, we're here looking at whatever we're looking at here on this port of the Mediterranean, and we're getting hassled by this woman who wants you to do what you will only do for the people of Israel. You know, the chosen people." She isn't part of the chosen people. So just please tell her to go. She wasn't included in this conversation, but it's possible that she could hear. There's a kind of arrogance that we can have when we're in a place where we really don't care what people hear when we discuss who they are, because we're just passing through, so hey, what does it matter? But she does not stop. She comes and kneels before Jesus saying, "Lord, help me." To which Jesus says, "It's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." Now, the disciples here would have been slapping Jesus on the back. Say, "Good one, that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we are the children of God. We are the people of Israel. We are the chosen ones." Nah. She's the dog. She is part of that community, the Gentiles, who are lost, and hey, God doesn't really care about them. So yeah, you tell her. Now, we hear the word dog used by Jesus in another place. And if you look up various Bible commentaries on this, you'll see there's like two main uses of the word dog. One in terms of a puppy, and one in terms of the Gentiles. So it's a derogatory term. You know, you can think of derogatory terms for other races that we have in existence nowadays. Some of them have turned into kind of friendly ones, terms of abuse, so to speak. But there still are terms of abuse, some of them worse than others. And here, Jesus seems to be using one of those terms of abuse. And the disciples will be high-fiving and double thumbs up and saying, "Yes, get rid of her. She should go now." But she's not going to have it. She's on her knees And she hears what Jesus says and replies, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." If anyone, you don't even have to have had a dog to know that this is exactly what dogs do. When I was putting the new television on the wall, I had to strengthen the cross beams and stuff to make sure it didn't fall off. And I bought myself a sub from, I think it was Subway, and that was going to be my reward for putting the television up. And so I put it on the coffee table, and I went off to get some tools, and I came back and I did the work, and then I went to the table and I'm sure I put my sandwich there. So then I start, 10 or 15 minute wander around looking for the sandwich, and then I eventually found the piece of paper that it was on, the wrapping. And then I noticed the dog was like, that was really good. And so, yeah, the dog didn't get the crumbs from the table. He got the whole thing. Thank you, Winston. Yes, helping me in my diet. But this is what dogs do. They hang around and they will sniff out and be a kind of four-legged Roomba for any crumbs which are edible, for some that are not. This is what dogs do. And so she follows through with this analogy, illusion, allusion, whatever you want to call it, and continues it, and says, yes, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. She recognizes in Jesus a master, somebody worthy to be kneeled before. She recognizes that he's right in what he says, that she has no rights to be asking him anything. But even if he would only allow a crumb to fall, it would suffice her. It would be enough. We rarely think of Jesus laughing. We see some pictures where he's holding a child going ha 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 or whatever, done in a kind of very Western style, of course, blue-eyed, blonde-haired thing. But we rarely think of Jesus hearing a joke and then cracking into laughter. But I do here, because it's not only beautiful, it's funny as well, because she's bested him, really. But she's done it because she really believes in who Jesus is from his reputation and what he can do for her. Not maybe do for her, but knows that he is the person who can heal. Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish. And her daughter was healed instantly. The text finishes there for us on a Sunday morning. We don't get a discussion. We don't get the disciples scratching their heads going, hey, hold on a minute. There's something wrong here. That shouldn't have gone down like that. What's going on? You said you've come for the people of Israel, the children of God, not the dogs. You just fed a dog. Don't you know what you've just done? Well, of course he does. But maybe that's the point. When Jesus talks about, the dogs, how does he put it again? I shouldn't stop moving these pieces of paper all over the place. It's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. I wonder if it was more for the disciples to hear, so it would confirm them in their prejudice, than it was for the woman to hear. And then Jesus turns the thing completely upside down. And what happens is that the disciples get an insight into the fact that, yes, Jesus has come for the people, the children of God, but he's also come for the dogs as well. And this must have been absolutely mind-blowing. I really can't think of any analogy today that would really match what Jesus did here. The nearest thing I can think of, well, it's more of an open question, because this is the way my mind works. But say there are aliens on other planets. St. Paul talks about the whole of creation groaning in travail. By creation, does he just mean planet Earth, or does he mean the whole cosmos? And if he means the whole cosmos, does the whole cosmos and any other aliens that may exist, do they need a savior too? So is Jesus their savior? And what comes to mind are some of C.S. Lewis's novels, Palandra and I can't remember the names of the other one now. But that's the question. Are we to include aliens? So say an alien came down, would we need to evangelize them or not? Would they be the dog? It's that kind of bigness that's happened to the disciples, where their small world of we are the people, we are the ones, we are the children. Wow, I just did a Michael Jackson song. Oh well. Did I? No, it's not Michael Jackson. It's that. It's one of those. You know what I mean. He's in it anyway. But their minds are blown. They suddenly realize that the salvation of God is bigger than their home territory, their own people, and it includes people they would like to call dogs. Pralandra, yeah. Out of the Silent Planets, yes. Yeah, there is another one. I can see the front cover of the book as well, because it's really weird. It's where the sea is a kind of solid, but the land moves all around, which is kind of just calling them by different names, really. It's like if I call this floor a puddle. But it's Lionel Richie. Oh, yeah, he was in it as well. It was one of those songs for Africa thing, wasn't it? We are the something, we are the children. Do, 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 do. So let's start. Do, do. I'm usually good with song lyrics, but for some reason, I don't remember that one very well. Oh dear. Was it the US version of Let Them Know It's Christmas, which was stupid? I mean, yeah, just sing the verse to yourself if you know it. Of course they know it's Christmas. Yeah, they are not on another planet. It's Africa, 54 different countries. Anyway, yes, back to this. So their minds are absolutely blown when he heals this person. And this is completely foreign to their experience. This lone woman, despised by the Jews, including the disciples, comes to Jesus in total surrender. That's the one. We are the world. Yes. I nearly got it. Thanks, Karen. I'd have been driving myself crazier if I didn't get that. So thanks. She totally surrenders to Jesus for a crumb, and her daughter gets healed. And here, Jesus is not looking at her nationality. He's not looking at her gender. He's not looking at her religion. He's looking at her faith in him. And her faith is greater than that of the disciples, which is why Matthew, who is a Jew himself, wouldn't leave this out of his gospel. If he only was ever going to write one thing, it would be the time that Jesus went out of the country and healed people who weren't Jewish. And this is just to show how ridiculous not just the Jews were in believing that they had an exclusive right to God and nobody else did, but we do the same. We wear blinders in our own way of faith. We decide that it's only a truth is only true if it's Christian true, whereas the truth is true wherever it is. Whether it's in science, whether it's in another religion, whether it's in philosophy, truth is true. Anything other than true, there are no alternative facts because that's called lies. The truth is true, and we celebrate that wherever it may be found. But often we hate this. Well, there are some iterations of Christianity which deny this, which is kind of the point Jesus is making here. She and her family and her people are just as welcome into God's kingdom if they have faith in Jesus as anybody else. There's no, well, first you got to go through this series of instructions, and in a few years' time, you start talking English with a proper accent like what I have, then you'll be okay. None of that. There's no enculturation involved, and that's one of the beauties of a lot of Christianity. When you go around the world and see how it's expressed. Back in my last parish in England, we had an Indian family, as in Indian subcontinent, and they wore saris. The women wore saris, and the men wore these beautiful coloured things. And it was just real. This was a dingy, dark church, freezing cold at the best of times. It's great for those few days of summer when you were dying because there's no air conditioning. But for the rest of the time, you wore. I used to wear the dog because at least he was warm. It was that bad. But they would come in their saris, and oh, it's beautiful. Some colour, some glamour. And we had a statue of Our Lady, of Mary. And they started putting saris on her, and they would change the saris according to the colour of the season. Because not only were they Indian, but they were Anglican. And so they knew about the church year. And it was just fascinating. And, I never actually saw anyone change the sari on that statue. It just seemed to happen. But this is where we can kind of ruin things when we think that our own experience of the Christian faith, our own expression of the Christian faith, is the one, and that there is no other. Jesus in this story belies all that. There's another part of it as well, that this woman was going nowhere else for salvation. And this was something that even the disciples didn't really catch on to. That yes, Jesus was the Messiah, but their whole concept of what Messiahship meant was not what he was teaching them. And they still did not get it. The number of times Jesus says, do you still not understand that? And then, he would go off into, explain what scriptures applied to what he was doing and why he was doing it. And they just didn't get it. In some way, this woman understood what it meant. There was nothing to do with the prejudice. It was to do with faith. It's to do with seeing the Messiah before her and having the faith to kneel before him and ask for help. How does that apply to us in our day? Well, I've just talked about truth and always searching for truth and celebrating truth. This can link us so many different ways with other people, even people who may not think that we have a lot of common with. And in a time and place where truth is quite rare, and lies are fashionable, we need to hold on to that. Last Sunday's reading to do with forgiving our enemies, feeding or giving a drink to our enemies applies just as much here. That we don't just see the things that divide us. We first see our common humanity, and then we try to build a rapport based on that. Is it easy? Not at all. It's scary. From the people who know my history, they know that the people I've met who've represented Islam have not been the best examples. It's always been associated with violence and destruction. And that was, again, in my last parish. But even while it was happening, I was still trying to hold on to the fact that this isn't the real expression of what this religion is. For the X number of people who throughout the world have become extremists, who want to kill people, who want to strap explosives to themselves and destroy others in the process, there are X million, if not billion, more people who want to live in peace, who want to get on with their own lives in their own way without disturbing anybody else. And within that number, there are those who are willing to hold out an olive branch and express a wish to have a rapport with people of a different culture. And within their own terms, there is a kindness and generosity which can often put Christians to shame. I remember, out of all the horror of my last parish, one of the best examples of this is that this lady who lived within a deeply Muslim populated area, and she was white English. Her husband died, and I was called in. It's somebody I'd never met before. But by the time I'd got there, all her neighbours, Muslim neighbours, had been around, and they'd brought her food and flowers and condolences, and they'd been caring for her in a way that in the more isolationist Western world, that sometimes does not happen. And it was an example to me of you can't just paint a whole people of a different religion or a different race with a brush. Maybe Karen, saying we are the world, it comes in useful in more ways than one, especially within this context. And to marginalize and to demonize a whole people because of their religion or their race is, well, it's just plain wrong. And yet, within myself, I struggle with that Pauline reading from Romans, because I have this reflexive distrust. But I know it's about me. I've got a saying somewhere. I wish I'd brought my iPad in. It's to do with forgiveness. And that forgiveness has really very little to do with the other person, but it's more to do with us and our ability to move forward and live and flourish, as is the saying for the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus isn't just a hodgepodge of pithy sayings here, there, and everywhere. Jesus is a flowing constant of God's love. His whole life is the realization of God with us. And we tend to forget that. We tend to just think of him as a kind of character in a novel rather than a real human being walking on earth, interacting with people, both good and bad. But he remaining this constant, sinless self, drawing all others to him, and he never turns anyone away. And so hopefully you've gotten something out of that reading, which is very, very common and popular because it contains a dog. And, well, it contains the naming of the word dog. And I hope you got something slightly different out of it. Well, I've got 10 minutes left. If you've got any questions about that, you can ask them now. Otherwise, I've got a couple more things that people have asked me, which I can sort of rant on about for 10 minutes. Excuse me. Gosh, my breakfast didn't go down very well. Let me have a drink. Now, do keep the emails. Some of you are quite naughty in your emails because they're so agenda ridden. But some of them are on the verge of. And so one of them, which was on the verge of, was kind of even-handed. So I think I can answer this. What did I think of the national conventions that were run by the Democrats and the Republicans? I've been here 14 years now, and I think I've been through this 4, I don't know, well, however many. I think it was George W. Bush who was president when I arrived, and then, which was the end of 2006. Everything seems to be so not long ago. And then it was Obama for 2, and then we've got Donald Trump now, and we're coming up to another election. So I have to say that uh, I'm both fascinated and deeply uninterested in these national conventions. I'm fascinated because they're such big shows. You know, they're it's like reality TV in some weird way, and there's a certain it's a bit like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. There's a certain inevitability what's going to happen at the end of the whole thing. Um, the talking heads talk. Um, you know, whoever is at the microphone, we great, we good, everyone else bad. Um, and there would be some sort of good morning, Father Lewis. Father Lewis is watching. Gosh, sounds like an ominous. There's another camera in here. Um, I hope you're well. And so there's the kind of inevitability of what you're going to hear. You know, there's the party lines. Um, it was the razzmatazz that kind of caught my attention more than anything. You know, the great big stage, the LED screens with all the flags and stuff, the jazzy music, that hideous strength. I should have remembered that one because one of my favorite guitarists did a whole album called that. Anyway, thank you, Karen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, I can sleep well tonight, hopefully. Um, and then there's the balloons at the end of it all. Um, you know, uh, for a long time I've thought, oh, if only I could creep in there and spend however many hours emptying those balloons and filling them full of helium. So when they release the balloons, nothing happens because they all go to the ceiling. I just thought that's just me. So yes, nothing like that happens in the UK. I mean, it's also low key. There's only a certain amount of money that you can spend. It only lasts 6 weeks, I think it is. There's quite a few parties that will be entered into the general election. Some of them you'll never hear anything of, but others you will. They are represented. The Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, and the Conservatives have a kind of national thing, um, but it's nowhere near as razzmatazzy. It's kind of it's a bit like British food. It's rather boring, and you just get these usually old people sort of rattling on about something arcane and completely not related to real life. So seeing the kind of color and stuff is kind of interesting. So I don't really listen to what they're saying. This year, though, because of the COVID thing, it's like, well, I wonder what they're going to do. Part of that is because of all the noise that's been made about this upcoming election, and partly because of the technology. One, I'm a technology buff, so that interests me. Two is I'm having to do this remote thing and live streaming thing myself. So if I can get any tips, then I'd want to do it. Well, first tip is I want a speechwriter, so I don't have to think about it and write anything down. And I want those little glass panel things either side of me so it can look as if I'm not looking at a text. I mean, not supposed to do that, but they do. Um, some are worse than others. Let's just say that, and make it look as if they're just riffing from the top of the head and from the depths of their hearts. Um, so I was interested in what was going to happen. I listened to some of it on both weeks, and I didn't listen to a lot of it on both weeks, and I kind of caught some of the um, highlights, I suppose. That well, let's put it this way: whatever the media considered to be the highlights of that day. Now, I'm only really interested when, and I've told you this before, when politics steps into the territory of either biblical scholarship or theology. And we did have one moment in the Republican, was it, is it RN, I can't remember, RNC thing, um, that where on it was Monday night, very early on, somebody talked about spawn of Satan. Now, if you're into heavy metal, that's a phrase that you're going to hear quite a lot. But I don't think it was meant to be in the terms of some kind of demonic powers versus the powers of good and light. It was meant as a kind of kickback against those who don't believe or agree with whatever the person was saying. It's a rather bitter phrase, and it was done with a certain air of lack of knowledge. As I mentioned on Sunday, Satan is basically, it means enemy. And so if you take what that person was saying in its literal sense, the spawn of the enemy. Now, there's a few things you can say. Coming from Europe, Britain, we are European, weirdly enough. Coming from England, within the Cold War period, the enemy was always not Russia. It was never the people of Russia. It was the Russian Politburo and the thing which sustained the then USSR, the fake government, the murderous, dangerous fake government. And nothing's really changed. We have Putin and his murderous hounds. See there? I just put in that dog word without even thinking about it. And they are just as bad, if not worse, because they now have the veneer of, what can I call it? Western civilization, which they didn't have before, which makes, to my mind, makes them all the more dangerous. But yeah, Putin, he's a murderer. He's the enemy. Same in China. It's not the Chinese people. They just want to get about their lives and do their own thing. But they have a government which controls almost everything they do, mostly for ill. And they, again, are a murderous regime. Same with some of the Middle Eastern countries. I wouldn't be selling airplanes or guns or even one of those water guns to them, because they are murderous regimes. North Korea. There's a whole list of what I would call enemy. But it's not the people themselves. It's the hierarchies. It's the governments. It's the institutions which maintain these corrupt regimes. That's the enemy. So when this person's talking about the spawn of Satan, so if I disagree with her, I'm the spawn of Satan, I'm the enemy. It's really, really dangerous. It's a very, very dangerous thing to say. Utilizing a biblical textual image and not knowing what it means makes it all the more dangerous, because we are Americans. We may disagree, but we are Americans. And there's a strength in that only if we recognize our common fellowship, and that everyone, because we are free, because we do have a constitution which allows us to say things that other people may not agree with, that's all the more reason why we should be listening. This is all the more reason why we should be looking for the truth in what people are saying and highlighting and celebrating that, while we still debate all the other stuff with which we disagree. But it doesn't come down to rioting. It doesn't come down to ending up in the middle of a riot with a rifle. It doesn't mean waving your flag as if nobody else cares about it and that you've got sole proprietary right to do that. The insinuations are very insulting, but it's all part and parcel of this very narrow-minded. We're back to this again. Us and them, where them can't possibly be in favor, in God's favor. So what you're saying about the spawn of Satan, the enemy, that they can't possibly be American, they can't possibly love the country, they can't possibly love the flag, they can't possibly want what's best for everyone. Is that what you're saying? Because if that's the case, you've really got your head on upside down. Well, I've got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to finish on that bombshell or cliffhanger or whatever you want to call it. Thank you for listening to me. I really, really do appreciate it. Thanks for sticking with me. Ooh, what just changed? We're still on. Yes, we are. I think it must have been my... Oh, yes, I've got fish and chips on my screensaver now. Ooh, sounds good. But yes, thank you for joining me today. I do appreciate it. Please keep me in your prayers as we move forward. Father Lewis and I will be meeting tomorrow to fight out the next few verses, or hopefully more verses, on the Sermon on the Mount to present to you on Thursday. So please join us then, 3 o'clock Thursday for afternoon tea with Father Lewis and me. Otherwise, I'll see you on Sunday. Until then, stay safe and God bless.